us with your journey of how you have learned to inspire this Renaissance of spirit in others around love.
Yeah, well, I was a child of the 70s. So growing up in the 70s, I was hearing, you can have it all. And and my parents were like, you can have it all. You can be successful. You can have a family. And that was really my mission of success, was being able to do that. But there was also this level of, you don't actually need a man.
Right.
You can do these things on your own.
Right.
So part of me was left with this feeling of, well, maybe it's not cool to want to be someone who wants a husband or do that I needed to have bigger goals. And then, at the same time, I was finding myself always, dreaming of that person that I would have in my life, that I would share my life with and grow old with.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up just kind of hustling along, climbing the corporate ladder, really keeping my focus on success as money and career,
Right.
and making that a priority. And I just got to this point one day in my 40s, waking up and realizing, here I am still single, and all my friends married, had kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't working for me anymore. I just decided, that was the moment I said, I don't want this. What I've always truly wanted, when I was honest with myself, was to have that person who I could love and be loved by. And that was kind of the switch for me. And that's when I made it my mission
Right.
to figure this out.
Wow.
And I did.
And you did.
And that's what I share now. I mean, I met this amazing man who, when I met him after having hundreds of dates and a handful of failed relationships at this point, it was a moment of, wow, I really met someone who meets my caliber, who gets me, who adores me, where there was so much ease and flow. And it really was a result of all of these things that I had discovered
Mm-hmm.
that I couldn't find anywhere else. I couldn't find in a course or through one person. I had to kind of piece it together for me
Right.
in a different way. And in my excitement of having my, what I call laser beam Larry is my husband, excitement in this relationship, I started sharing it with other women.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't help but share. It was just so exciting that they were also having these kinds of results. And, that's when I also knew I had something really special to offer.
Right. So it's fascinating. Just some pieces that I think everyone in the audience can resonate with is that we have messages we grow up with, right? I was also told I could do it all, and that also meant get married and have children. No one mentioned I shouldn't try to do it all at the same time, that that might be a little too much. But I think everyone in the audience can relate to that we have a history about what we were told and what we've been told relationships should look like and how those should work, and then who we should be in a relationship. I actually grew up in a family where I was told that I was a bit too much, that it'd be hard for me to find a man to love me because I was just a lot, right? Meaning I needed to tone it down if I was ever going to find love. So I think our audience can definitely relate to that. And then relate to, at some point, realizing that what I have isn't everything I wanted. I'm living an old script. And it sounds like that's what happened. You lived an old script. So how did you... So let's talk about that. How did you go from finding the courage to live that script, corporate success, to changing And we'll get into what you do and how you do it in a minute. But how did you find the courage to make that change? From like corporate America to doing the work you do now.
Well, there was always this, part of me, because I studied art and theater, and you know, my parents were very generous in saying, you know, do what you love and follow that. But once I got to the point where I had graduated with a double major in art and performance, and then I had a master's in puppetry arts, and all of those things were so specific, and I definitely toured and performed for a while, but I got really kind of scared because the money wasn't coming in, and I was really, you know, living off of the bare minimum, feeling kind of like, oh, I should be further along. And then one day I just picked up and moved and started temping, and because I wanted to figure out a new way to make money, and I started, you know, climbing the corporate ladder, and I got into really great jobs eventually. I mean, there's a lot of stories in there, but where I was making over 6 figures, I had 2 houses, and so yeah, that part was kind of addictive, but I always knew that I wanted to do something where I was serving people and being creative, and you know, it did become kind of a trap in some ways, because you're making the money, yet you have this love to do something different, which I know so many.
Okay, so Macy, can you hear me? I think we just lost your sound. Can you check?
I'm here.
There you go. Okay, yeah.
I'm here.
You know, I just have to tell everyone listening and watching that we now have 6 planets retrograde. Mars just went retrograde. So if something technological is not working right, it's not just Mercury that messes with us with that. So we just all have to sort of relax with it and understand that sometimes technology does what it does. Okay, so great story. So sometimes you're right, the money can be like velvet chains, and our heart still aches for something else.
Yeah.
And you were able to follow that. You were able to say, this is what, so that's really amazing that 1, you had the courage to do it, and that 2, you figured it out. So let's talk about what helped you figure out what to do, like this secret that you discovered about finding love and living your heart's passion.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I can say that my number 1 success strategy was creating a healthy, loving partnership in life.
Okay.
And that was totally counter to what I grew up with, and, you know, women's lib and all of these stories of like, oh, okay, just, you know, be independent and do that. And it wasn't that I wasn't independent, I was creating everything that I did. But when you have a partner by your side cheering you on and you have a shared life, it is easier.
Yes.
And I was finding that, you know, as I created my relationship, that's one process, but to actually go from corporate to entrepreneur was a huge leap, and the way that actually helped in doing that. I mean, there was a clear, distinct moment in my corporate career where, you know, I actually just couldn't do it anymore. I just knew too much about what I wanted to create, and I was going to do whatever it took, because that's how I found love. That's how I got all my other jobs. That's how I bought houses. That's how I created success everywhere else. Was I made that decision and did whatever it takes. I hired coaches. I got support. I invested in myself. So it really is kind of 2 feet in
Mm-hmm.
and saying yes yourself, and screwing things up along the way at times, which continues to happen, and then being willing to be my biggest champion for my desires.
Yes, yes. And in fact, when I was on your website, I saw that a great deal. That's sort of the overwhelming message of the website. That first, love starts inside, and it's happiness starts inside, and it's about how we, my saying is walking in my power without fear or apology. That's my little snippet, but I found that. How do people find you? Before we get too far, I want to make sure. So is it bighappylove.com? Is that where they can Google Big Happy Love, right? And find you there? Right? And then you have workshops.
Absolutely. Big Happy Love.
Big Happy Love. You have workshops, you do one-on-one consulting, you do readings, which we'll talk about in a minute, and you actually have a free webinar tomorrow. And if somebody goes to Big Happy Love, they'll find that and they can still sign up for it. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. So we have a great deal in common, having left one world for another. I talk about getting to the point where I knew I had sandpaper on my soul and I could no longer do that other thing. Changed careers the first time. And now this change happened when I realized, and actually it was funny, I realized I was done when I put purple streaks in my hair and went to work. I was an academic dean, and during COVID, the blue, I've now gone to blue, but they've washed out. But I remember going to work and someone saying to me, you have streaks in your hair. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, you're an academic dean. And I thought, oh, that's the message. I just told myself that it's almost time to leave this. Because I think sometimes we look in the mirror and we realize we're changing how we look, and that could be the first message that it's time to change. So, yeah. So let's go into some of what you discovered. So you hired these coaches, you did this inner work, and you came up with what is a very unique approach to love. So can you just talk about that for a moment, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, this was this was my journey, and since I've studied and added so much to the way that I work with people. But when I realized I absolutely am ready to find phenomenal love with someone who totally gets me for me, and no more wasting time, no more settling, no more winging it, that I hired a life coach, because I didn't really know about love coaches at that point. I don't even know how many there were at that point. But and as I was looking around for anything specifically for what I wanted, I just didn't see it. So that's why I got support. I really got into the inner work of where I wasn't really clear on what it was that I wanted. I realized that I had worn masks for so long to fit into the corporate world and to play the roles that I needed to play, which actually worked great for me, because I would just say, okay, well, if you need someone to do that, I'll be that, and I would just be what people needed. But I was also kind of using that in my dating world. I was thinking, oh, if I want a man, I'll just be that. And then I was losing myself in every relationship. So the strategy that I ended up taking really ended up being a mind, body, spirit experience, and that's what I teach my clients. There's plenty of things out there that will tell you, these are the rules, this is what you have to do, you've got to go on so many dates, you have to do it this way, and that's completely not what I did or teach or my clients do, and they're creating amazing relationships.
So it's fascinating because I don't know if I had told you when we talked before that I re-entered the dating world a little over a year ago, and definitely tried some online dating, and had taken a break from that. Though I met amazing people, we just didn't click. I also met some people who I would refer to as sort of stand-up comedy routines, that there was that. And one of the things I noticed is the fear that, and this is for men and women, of showing up as who they truly are, right? So somebody will post a picture of themselves from 20 years ago, and I know they don't look like that, and or they on a first date they reveal issues about themselves or elements of themselves that tell me they should have been on a different dating site. So is honesty of self one of your first pieces? Like, how do you get to help people do that, be honest?
Well, I would say it's honesty with yourself about who you are and who the right person is for you, and that can be a process. I mean, when you are looking out into the online dating world and your lenses are, okay, how many people are lying to me, who's, and getting sucked into kind of the drama of people aren't telling their right age, or they're posting old pictures. I mean, there's a lot of good people out there that are bad daters, and people aren't taking the time to learn how to do this. The online dating world, unfortunately, and I'm talking about this in my webinar, how to be the CEO of your love life and win at love without losing yourself along the way. That's what you mentioned, and it's on my website right on the front page, Big Happy Love. You can sign up there. But we're talking about how the online dating world is not here, like, they don't necessarily care if you find an amazing person. It's just software.
Right, that's great.
And
that's great.
It has some features and algorithms that are in it, but the thing is, there's no barrier to entry. So everybody's on there. So if you can remember that it's just software, if you can remember that these people, really most, I know there's because there's no barrier to entry, there really are people out there who, want to scam people and whatever. But there's ways of detecting that pretty easily. But most people really just want connection. That's a human need, a core need. And when we can just have compassion for that and just follow the energy of the people that are lighting us up, then it's going to work a lot better. And I think of it like going into the grocery store, you're walking down the aisles, you're like, low sugar granola, that sounds really exciting to me today. And then you lean into that. You're not going past the Apple Jacks and getting all pissed off because it's not what you want,
Right.
So you're just neutrally navigating that scene.
So this is lovely, because I think what you're talking about, because definitely that's been my experience, that so many people, I sometimes equate the dating sites to Amazon Prime with how some people treat them. And Amazon, we find what we want, but I love how you talk about following what excites us, following that light. So there's like not necessarily a psychic, but a spiritual or an energetic level to this, to dating for you, be it on an online dating site or just when you first meet somebody, right? So even in a first date, would you have that same kind of advice?
Well, I would say the energy continues to shift, but certainly on a first date, I think it's still the similar advice. But typically, if you're online dating and you're putting yourself out there, I just invite people to just really play. Like, if you haven't done the inner work if you haven't kind of shed those layers of, beliefs and maybe frustration or pain from the past, then unfortunately putting yourself online before you've done that pre-work is going to be like putting a limping baby bunny in front of a hungry wolf. Like, you just don't want to do that. You want to be able to go into it from a place where you're not wearing the lens of like protection and judgment and like fear or having to get it right and not wanting to do it wrong. Like, all of that intensity doesn't help. So, initially online, it's going to be a very neutral sort of shopping for groceries thing. The second level with the first date is still, you're in, okay, is this person a good match for me? And really empowering yourself in those ways. And then it just kind of develops from there. But most people are putting so much pressure on themselves at the beginning and making online dating this evil monster before they even start. And if you talk to anybody, you're probably going to get a laundry list of stand-up comedy routines about the dates that they've gone on. And that, becomes very impressionable if you don't own your space. So this is what I mean by being the CEO of your love life. Is about owning your vision and owning what you engage with and owning your heart and being able to really create something different. And I know for me, I went from a 500 dates to, once I did this work, I met Larry, who's probably the third person I met, and the people I met before him were also really great people, just not mine. And I was engaged within 3 months. So things can change.
Things can change. And I think that that's a powerful message for everybody listening, that so often we do, like you say, we get so stressed out, or we treat the process as something onerous or something painful, as opposed to it's a discovery process. And I do agree completely that it's the inner work first. In fact, I tell people that, so my husband passed away about 4 years ago, and I made a vow to not make any big decisions or even try to date for at least a year. My job changed a year after that, and I thought, okay, give myself another year. And I gave myself a good 3 years before I even tried, because I wanted to make sure, who am I now? I've gone through some major life changes. What is my life about? And then, of course, my life did lots of aerobics and aerobatics and wild changes, and I love my life. I'm doing great, and now I know that waiting was the right thing to do, and that waiting until I found myself as this new person was the best way to go at this. And so I've in no way given up. I'm just COVID has shifted a few things, and so I'm wondering if we can talk about just words of encouragement, even for people. Can we still find love in this time of social distancing? What are you finding with your clients as in this new time frame?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, because I know that for many people it can be a quick, okay, it can't happen, I have to give it up, I have to put it aside. Yet what I really want people to hear is that this is actually even more important now, because what we're noticing is, the isolation and the loneliness is so detrimental to, obviously, our mental health. And so what I'm seeing with my clients is actually more people are recognizing, you know what, I really do want this. Having that little amount of lockdown. I mean, I'm talking about Colorado, where we were really locked down for about 6 weeks.
Yes.
And not going anywhere. it wakes people up. And so what we noticed was this huge influx of people moving to these online dating platforms, but also just online platforms. So there are, college gatherings, alumni gatherings, there are special interest groups, there's a lot of different groups meeting online. So in one sense, there's ways of connecting easier than ever, and it's just about learning the skills to create relationships in that way. And I know a lot of people right now are probably thinking, but I'm so sick of being online, I don't want to be online, I don't want to be on another Zoom thing or whatever. And I totally hear you. And I would just say, there's part of it is taking care of yourself in that way, but also taking care of your need to connect and have community. So two things. One, people are waking up to actually recognizing that this is important. The other distractions are gone. You can't just go to the gym or go out dancing or, go to happy hour to numb yourself or distract yourself. The core human need of wanting connection and being loved and loving is louder than ever. So listen to that. That's important. And then the second piece is that, there's a consciousness, there's a different level, there's a slowness to getting to know people. So people aren't just swiping and hooking up. It's just more complicated. I mean, I guess people can, but it's not recommended by the health department. And so these things are creating an actual space for doing that work of getting to know someone before locking into the emotional attachment that happens when we hook up too fast or just jump in too fast. So that part, all of those parts, I feel like people are finding themselves in better relationships than they ever thought they could have right now. It's and I'm seeing it with my clients.
That is so awesome, and I think also fascinating because some of the work that I do with astrology is to help people find their past life wound or their lineage wound and how that has controlled them, and that how we move to what our soul truly craves. Different language, similar to what you're talking about. Like we have to stop being run by our past to create the future that we really want. And what I'm finding during COVID is because we've been pushed inward so much and we're alone, that more people are seeking that. And it's interesting what you said, that it's this juxtaposition of using online more, and yet things are slower, more like when we wrote letters or met somebody and we didn't rush into it. So, and I've some of my clients have said, how do I even see someone? Like in Colorado during the summer, I had people do parking lot dates. So just meet in a parking lot, bring your chairs, or pop the back of your SUV, because half of us have SUVs, and be far enough apart in some sort of quiet spot or near a park, and you can meet face to face, but without the sort of long dinner or at a bar or all that other distraction on top of it, and so you actually talk more. So I think that what you're pointing out is, yes, it's more online, but on some ways it's more intimate, is what we're doing. And that COVID, in some ways, the pandemic, has made us realize what we truly desire is, in part, this human connection. Do you ever have people who are in relationship also benefit from your work? So let's say somebody's in a relationship and they find you, would a one-on-one coaching session with you help them improve a relationship?
I do have a process called regenerating images in memory, which is a really powerful process for anyone who's finding themselves stuck in any way. And so I definitely had typically I don't work with a lot of men in my programs, but I've had men and people in relationship and, you know, people wanting to get to that next level of success come and do one of those sections, because it gets to that point of creation of where the stuckness happened and really changes that so that you actually feel different and make different choices.
So somebody could be in a relationship and do that. And I want to point out that often it's women who gravitate to what we're talking about more, but I think it's absolutely for men also. And it isn't just for certain kinds of relationship. I think the LGBTQIA community would also find benefit in this work. So it's not in any way specific, right? It's simply about honoring and respecting yourself first, finding that deep love of yourself, and then realizing from there you manifest relationships, right? And I think you also talk about about attracting things to you. I talk about the law of seduction, but I think I noticed that you also talk about sort of drawing things to you about instead of chasing them. Did I see that right on your website?
Yeah, I mean, I typically talk about how, you know, your inner world, your point of view is creating your reality. So that is it. But I would say that it's really a dynamic thing. You know, there is attraction and then there's choosing things. So it's not just one or the other. But I think a lot of times people misunderstand attracting as, okay, now I don't really have to do anything or take action. And when you're aligned with your truth and your inspiration and you aren't distracted by the inner obstacles of the fear and the doubt or insecurities or pressure to, you know, keep growing in your career or whatever the thing is that keeps you from actually choosing your love story that's also there, then, you know, when you have more space, then you start noticing opportunities, and then you can choose those things that end up being part of the breadcrumbs that lead you to your beloved.
Yeah. That is so lovely, because I think often, as I said, I talk about the law of seduction, but the law of attraction, any of that, it isn't just sitting still and doing nothing. It is a spiritual process, which is what you're talking about. You may not use that word, but that is absolutely what you're talking about. All of that inner work, figuring that out, and then realizing that you have to be active. So I can't just sit in my house and dream about finding love and then that's it. That's all I do. I can't just do that inner work and then do nothing else and expect someone to come knock on my door.
Well, the thing is, you're going to just naturally, when you're in the space of just aligning with all of the things that light you up and you're living your life in love, because I say how you love your life is your love life. When you're in that space, you naturally are going to do things.
That's right.
So it's not even that you're thinking about it. It's not that, okay, well now I can't just be sitting here thinking, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and it will just happen.
Right.
And wait, and then force myself to go online or whatever. It's just like things come into flow.
Yes.
And then you're naturally excited to play online or do a dating site, or you're naturally inspired to be in new communities or whatever the thing is.
Right. So we're following. So I love how at the beginning you talked about that the rules that sometimes we see online about how to date and how to make a good impression online, that's not what this is about. This is about becoming a deeper, a truer sense of who you are, having that sense, living that. Loving your life is your love life. I love that. And then naturally things happen. So It's funny because I've been so incredibly active, and numbers of my friends have too, hiking and biking, doing everything I love to do, and I'm so grateful to live in Colorado where I can do those things and still be socially distanced. I mean, it's wonderful. And I've met just a lot of friends, a lot of new people have come into my life, and I just count all of those as blessings and gifts. So let me pause 1 second. I should have done this a little before. If you are tuning into the end of the show, it is the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, the stream. I have the marvelous Macy with me today, and you can find her if you just do a Google on Big Happy Love. She is a love coach. She has private sessions. She has a workshop. She actually has a free webinar tomorrow, Friday, and you can go to Big Happy Love, and it is at the top of her website, and sign up for that. And what you're going to take away from this, I have to say, is not just how to improve your love life, but how to fall in love with yourself and live the life you've always wanted. And I think that's a fair statement. So, Macy, I have to ask you, just because all of this is wonderful, but one of the other unique things about you, as if you weren't unique enough, is this thing on your website about recipe readings, and you have to talk about that, because I've never heard anyone do that.
Well, I would love to talk about it. Thank you. I go by Reverend Lunch Lady. I actually am a reverend, but I call myself Reverend Lunch Lady for these readings, and I'm showing, if you guys are watching the Facebook Live where you can see us, I'm showing a recipe box that is one of the many decks that I have received as gifts and in magical ways. And I call this Dead Old Lady Secret Recipe Tarot. It's not really tarot, but and I've just been fascinated with old recipes for a really long time. And as I started reading them, I was getting these amazing messages, and I've always had intuitive abilities and worked as an animal communicator and a psychic, and this became this special gift from the divine for me to share amazing messages for people, and they can be really profound. And I never get the same recipe twice. Well, maybe a couple times I have, but I have thousands of them, so it's really rare.
Right.
And so I pull a card, and based on what the question is, I just listen to the message.
So how did you start? And I have to say that it's so fascinating, because I do psychic work and you do, and I didn't realize you were an animal communicator. I was going to tell you that I keep picking up animals around you. That not people spirits, but animal spirits all around you. And I had to put my dog to sleep in March, and since then, an old dog protector that had been in my life when I was younger has shown back up. And as soon as we connected, that dog showed back up next to me. So interesting, we have that in common. But how did you discover this? I've never heard anyone do this. How did, like, one day you just pulled out a recipe and something happened?
I just had picked up one of these old recipe books, and I felt so connected to it, and it was somebody's collection of recipes. That one was actually in a small metal book where she had written all her recipes down, and I felt like I just got this deep, like, download of her, experience, and how that connected to the family, and how it just brought people together, and all of the drama and the just like there was so much that was connected to this book that I started just randomly opening it and receiving messages, and then it just made sense. And then I saw, recipe cards are kind of like actually pulling a card if you use tarot, or some people just have angel decks and all sorts of decks, and it just became my special deck. And then, I like humor, I found it amusing, I like metaphors, and just, playing with the Reverend Lunch Lady, and begin giving be given in from non-conventional texts and teachers. And so all of these old ladies that contribute to these decks become the non-conventional teachers, I guess, I don't know, text and teachers and gospel and wisdom and all of it coming together in a way that I, get to share with the world.
So I'm just checking the Facebook site to see if anyone has posted any kind of question or comment. And if you're listening, you can go to the Dr. Elisa Show and just post a question on my site, or you can also message me on Facebook, and just wondering if there's any questions. So this is, this is such a perfect fit with your personality. What you project is why, that you're drawn to things that are not the typical thing, and you make them your own, which I think is part of the message that you're giving to men and women, right, about love, is find your uniqueness, find your special place, and then let that shine. I think I did mention to you that while I did start with tarot as a kid, I now use crystal balls, and that's my preference. Astrology and crystal balls, a combination of that, and partly because they're not common, because other people don't. But I just was attracted to them. So what kind of, how do you find, so you're doing these readings, and there are these lovely, maybe women coming, maybe men, but probably women coming forward as guides. Do you do this for some of your clients when they're stuck in their love life? Because I'd love to have people also connect to you for readings. And why would I come to you about a love life problem, or is it really any issue in my life that I might ask you about?
I am open to anything people want to ask, and here's the thing, all of the dead old ladies, there's a whole variety of them. They have different voices, not that I'm giving a different voice when I'm sharing, but they have different ways of communicating. Some are kind of gentle and loving, a nice hot cup of hot chocolate from grandma, and sometimes they're just kind of rip the Band-Aid off, I never know, but people, I find it to make fun community. I'll do lives and on Facebook and just have people share their questions, and we do brief readings, and I offer my clients these too, and I do them as part of my coaching. It's helpful, it's a different way of getting inspiration, and as long as I just tell people that, there's a couple things that I don't typically do. I don't predict the date of when they're going to get married or anything like that, although sometimes dates come up. So I guess I can't really say, but it's not meant to be super serious. This is about, typically people ask me what are their blocks to love, and we get a lot of love and dating things. I did a whole 30-day course where every day I pulled the recipe, and every day it was a teaching for relationships, and that was called Gideon Love, and people can actually get that course if they want, and it's really amazing. It's just super fun what came through, but every day was a different recipe.
I love that. I love the fact that you're doing it in a different way, and a lot of people, some sort of 30-day message is, that's quite a gift anyway. But to get it in this way from these elders that we wouldn't necessarily think of as wise women, and yet they had their own wisdom, and you're reading through them. So I think that's just absolutely incredible. That's like an amazing.
They know the universal love laws for sure. That's the thing that I had an experience of, I was a volunteer in the senior center for a while, and I really felt like that was a huge contribution to my love story, because I was addressing something that was my biggest fear about being single. And one of my biggest fears was, okay, wait, I don't have children, I'm not even married, I was single. I was thinking, I'm going to be that old lady in the home where no one comes to visit me. And that was just a heartbreaking story I was telling myself. And then I realized, like, okay, well, what could I do right now to change that? And the inspiration I got was to go hang out with single old ladies in homes. So I went there and hung out with the women that didn't have people visiting them, and I played Scrabble every weekend, and I made amazing friends. And I tell you that the energy of being with these wise women, these elders, which we don't tend to value in our culture like other cultures do, it was one of the most transformative experiences of my life. I met one of my best friends there. Her name was Harriet, and I think she actually brought the magic that brought my person in. You know, I would say that was one of the biggest influences, and she was so supportive through me being single all the way until she actually met Larry and totally fell in love with him. And so this is really an honoring of these women, that they do know a lot.
Right. Yeah. Just as another thing we have in common, one of my closest friends is an 80-something-ish, I won't reveal her name, her age, author, who's a very famous author, happens to live in Colorado, and I study Hebrew with her, but she also mentors me in writing, we don't talk about writing, but writing is part of life. And so we talk about that, and it's amazing. So we just have a few minutes left. I would love to know, and thank you so much for your time, I would love to know what still inspires you, because this show, again, is about inspiring a renaissance of spirit. What still inspires you to do this work?
I mean, it sounds probably obvious or cliche, but my husband really inspires me. The relationship that I've created, and, you know, being in a creative, conscious, loving partnership where there are moments where, you know, we come into tension and frustration, and it's like knowing that I am able to be with someone who we can put the stuff on the table and actually listen and adapt and transform and rise above and create even greater is an amazing thing. And beyond that, I would say, you know, I just really inspired by creativity. I'm inspired by animals. I mean, I am so in love. I would say hashtag must love dogs, love coach, because
absolutely must love dogs.
Most of my clients are animal lovers, and I know how healing that is.
Right. And in fact, while I'm also, you know, sort of in the dating world, I'm also in the inviting another dog into my life world. And so I'm actually using the same kind of energy of here's what my life is about, and I want to share it, and I want a dog who wants to share that with me. And so I'm actually using a great deal of what we talked about to open that door for that dog. And it's so funny, I've had several psychics tell me that my old dogs are sending me a dog because the man I'm supposed to meet isn't ready yet. And so my dogs don't want me to be alone. And so it's a funny, repetitive message that I get. And so I'm sure, and every time I'm out hiking, other people's dogs come up to me, and people will say that they don't do that. I'm like, they're just asking me where my dog is, or they're telling me, don't worry, the dog's coming. And so I'm getting reassurance from other dogs, because it's so amazing. So I want to do this. I want to do this again. We're almost out of time. In fact, we're going to run over a couple minutes here. People can find you if they Google Big Happy Love. You have workshops. You have a webinar tomorrow. You do recipe readings. You do private coaching and consulting. And so I want everyone who's been listening to make sure, just go check out her website, because there's all these amazing videos on there that are little tidbits, and they're fun and they're inspiring, so I encourage you to do that. I also want you to remember that this is the Dr. Elisa Show, and that I also have private readings, and I have packages, and I also have a workshop on thriving as an empath during this time. You can find everything on my website, elisarobin.com, and you can find ways you can email me from there so that I can give you a session, which is usually a soul session, usually an hour and a half to 2 is my first one. And we talk about many of the things that Macy and I just talked about. What are your lineage wounds? What are the beliefs that you came in with that are keeping you from living what your soul, the life that your soul truly craves? So I want to thank you for tuning in today. Macy, thank you for being my guest. And I am so sorry that we are actually out of time, because as you all know, this is something I love, the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, the stream. I wish you all well, and I will be back in 2 weeks, one with the Crystal Ball Hour. You got to tune in for that, live readings with my crystal ball. It's always the third Monday of every month at 2:30. And then that same week, we'll be back with another amazing guest. We are going down the psychic trail on my next one, and you've got to tune in. So thank you for joining me, and stay well, stay healthy, and I will see you soon.